Yo, yo, yo! And welcome to this edition of the Base Batch Builders 3 series, highlighting some of the submissions who are building for Base Batches 3. Now, today we are graced with Krishan of Yieldseeker. So, without any further ado, please introduce yourself and tell us what you are building here on Base.
Hi, yes, I'm Krishan. I'm my co-founder, author. We build Yieldseeker on Base. So Yieldseeker is a platform for agents to do the complex DeFi activities that are inaccessible to people, either because they don't know about them, like really high learning curves, or you don't have time because everything's moving all the time and you have jobs and kids and everything else going on in life and you can't be looking at prices all day. Or it's just too daunting, or whatever the reasons people aren't in DeFi. We're trying to remove that by making agents do all the complicated stuff for you. And so we started with managing USDC on Base. So you come to Yieldseeker, you create an agent, you give it a name, you can kind of set some rules. You give it some USDC, and then you literally never have to come back. The agent will keep you updated via Telegram, and you can talk to it, and it will move your money between different vaults to get you the best yield possible. Yeah, I mean, there's lots to talk about, but
that's that right there. I think is a lots of people want the set and forget model. Like, so I currently do a DeFi show, and my co-host on that, he's very active on the pools. He has like the different ranges, and he's sort of been like holding my hand, sort of educates me on like how to do this. But you need to be effective, you need to really especially with like the tight ranges, you need to be monitoring it like daily. And it's for somebody who's in crypto, it's a challenge. It's like, and just juggling it with life. But for people that want exposure but don't want to all those extra steps, it sounds like you guys are really finding a service to that need.
Yeah, exactly. So I, just as a bit of a background, I spent most of my life working in like traditional finance, AI companies, and then in 2020, like my last company got sold, and so I hooked up with Arthur. I went to uni with Arthur, so we've known each other for like 15-20 years now. So in 2020, we got back in touch, and it was like, let's work on something in crypto because it's just interesting. He's been in crypto for a long time, and it was my first foray. And at that time, NFTs really spoke out to me, and so I know a lot about NFTs. I worked a lot with NFTs, building lots of cool kind of additions to Wolf Game and stuff like that. But I never really got into DeFi, and so with Yieldseeker, like it was actually my first time using DeFi complex in a complex way. Not even that complex. I mean, there's some crazy stuff going on. What we do is kind of relatively simple straight right now, still very complex, but compared to like the crazy stuff. And even that, like, I had been in crypto at this time for like 5 years and still had barely used any DeFi stuff. Mostly because, like you said, it's just so daunting, right? There's just so much to have to know, to have to do. Like even if you go to like the Morpho site, like now, Morpho is an amazing product, like actually generally very simple to use once you get it. But if you go to the site, like, I found it confusing, let alone like the next wave of people that we expect to be onboarding into crypto. Like they're not going to look at this and think, I understand what's going on. Like they're going to look at this and think like, this isn't for me. And so, yeah, we really think agents are the solutions for this. We think being able to like have a conversation with not a protocol, but have a conversation with an entity that can decipher this kind of craziness for you, and then actually execute on your behalf. That just feels it just feels obvious to us now. And one of the cool things that we the way we approached Yieldseeker is we started with a simple agent, USDC on Base. So it's you can't lose money. Like if you lose money, we've done something incredibly wrong. And if you earn less than like what you would earn at your traditional finance bank account, again, we've done something very wrong. Like that should not be a possible outcome of this project at all, and hasn't been so far, which is great. But this is really like the proving layer, right? Like, will people trust agents? Will people interact with agents? Will people allow agents to manage their money? And the cool thing is that we've been going for about a year, and the cool thing is we feel like that's been validated now. So we have about $1.5 million in deposits, all fully managed by an agent. Like we don't do stuff, right? Like we don't do anything with this money. The agents do it for their users directly. And so now it really feels exciting to be able to do more interesting types of agents. We know that people trust agents, at least with this kind of relatively straightforward DeFi activity. Obviously, still very complex compared to like opening an account with Chase or whoever. But now, like you said, with liquidity provision, that's one of the projects that we've kind of demoed internally. Even borrowing, so like you have Bitcoin, you want to borrow USDC, but managing that borrow is something that we've tried with agents and actually works really well. We haven't launched a second agent just yet because there's still we're also looking at things like automated trading on Polymarket. We see that happening a lot with people's OpenClaw instances. So we're not totally sure exactly what our second one will be, but the goal is 5 years from now, there's like an agent for almost any DeFi activity you can think of. And then, the real kind of complexity starts happening when these agents are like interacting with each other. So you have a trading agent that uses the yield agent as its kind of deposit area, and then when it wants to execute a trade, it can ask that guy, like, pull out the most liquid one. I'm going to take it for maybe an hour. It pulls out from the right source, gives it to you, you trade, and then gives it back and says, like, I'm not going to trade again for maybe 2 hours, so put it somewhere where I can access it 2 hours from now.
Okay, so there was a lot of meat on that bone. Lots of interesting things to digest there. Now, so in terms of traction, you said that you've been running for about a year. You've got $1.5 million in deposits, so you've clearly got some traction now. And with AI agents becoming more of like a meta and more of an accepted medium and trusted in so many more instances just in the last 2 months, like what is like, how do you get to the next step in terms of scaling?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's still a lot of open questions. It's something me and my co-founder Arthur talk about quite frequently. We're seeing a lot of interesting stuff happening in the market. So like with OpenClaw coming out, like people now have their own assistant, in the way that everyone imagined, like, oh, we're all going to have our own Jarvis or something. Like that's kind of happening with OpenClaw. Personally, like I've got a few OpenClaws running. I don't have one that does everything for me, right? It's not managing my life, which, you see on Twitter, but I think it's just a lot of LARP. Like, I don't really need an agent to manage my email. I just need to unsubscribe from 50 different things, right? Like nothing that important is coming really. Whereas like I have set up an OpenClaw. I've got 2 running at the moment that are like, I can't really live without anymore. One that manages my Twitter, so it doesn't tweet on my behalf, but it has its own account. It's called Yield Seed, which is, I thought was a cool name. So it's like our intern account. So it'll go and just monitor the state of conversation about agents, Base, or agents had Base, like agentic things happening on Base, yield tracking, like conversations are relevant to the current yield seeker agents, and then send them to me and tell me why they're relevant, and then I can go and interact with them. And another bot that manages my fitness, so I tell it what I'm eating, what I'm lifting, and it kind of gives me good feedback and helps me if I'm injured or anything. And like, I think this world, so it's like, if we have the Jarvis version or this version where you have like separate agents doing separate things, it's hard to know where everything comes out because obviously everything's changing so fast. So in 2 years, it could be that the Jarvis mode is the right one and everyone's just interacting with one. I use OpenAI and I just interact with OpenAI. That goes off everywhere and does what it needs to do. So because we can't judge where that world is going, our goal at the moment is to make the kind of foundation layers of like agentic DeFi, right? So we want anyone's agents, so your own Jarvis or your own OpenClaw or your own kind of service, like if you have your own app, to be able to use our agents as sub agents of the bigger picture, and execute on the DeFi strategy. So like our agents will always be very specific things about not about DeFi, but like specific actions or specific kind of mentalities that you want to approach your DeFi activity with. How we combine those is interesting. I think that's where we haven't really fully fleshed it out yet, because if you have a yield agent and a borrow agent and a gambling agent, how do they speak to each other and how do you maintain the responsibility so that they're not kind of they're not just making mistakes and then blaming each other, which feels like the natural, naturally when you build a company, like the responsibility gets diffused, and as long as if people don't know which responsibility is theirs, that will just fall through the cracks, right? And I think that's the more challenging part here. So yeah, overall the strategy is like own the layer, the agentic layer that so it's DeFi, which is like kind of almost infrastructure now, and then the agentic layer which interacts with it, and allow humans to use that directly, or humans to direct their agents to use our agents.
Right on. Now, I think lots of people aren't interested in how the sausage is made; they just want the results. And if this is a way to streamline the process and make it easy and just give almost like executive reports to the humans, like, hey, this week we're in these pools, the APR is X amount, and are you happy with the results, or should we change to other pools? I think that's I can definitely it's a logical transition in finance and using the agentic layers. But my next question really is, so you've submitted for Base Batches 3 and you're building on Base. What is your goal, and what are you hoping to get out of the Base Batches experience?
Yeah, I think the biggest goal is just aligning ourselves more with Coinbase, Base. Even like with the app changing, like we were so keen to get our kind of agent in that chat area that they had for agent chats, that seems to have gone now. Like I think the main thing is just aligning with the Base team to make sure that we're kind of pointing in the direction that they're hoping to go in. It's all a bit unclear at the moment, anyway. That feels like the strongest thing we can do, because we really we're like 100% Base, right? Like Base is where, when we started, actually, it wasn't the case. It wasn't obvious that Base is where agents would live. But for us, it was obvious because, Yield Seeker wouldn't really work on mainnets. No other chain has the same kind of liquidity that we need. I'm not a huge fan of Solana. Like Base was the obvious choice. And so we've known that Base was the obvious place for agents, since we started a year ago. And now that's like actually firmly come true. So it feels great to have been here early and to be part of that, part of the ecosystem so well. So I think it's just that, extending our kind of footprint in the ecosystem, but also making sure that we're aligned with where kind of the whole ecosystem is moving. That's our biggest, we're not, publicity and stuff like that is kind of, it's important, but it's not kind of the main thing. The main thing is mostly being close to them and moving forward together.
I strongly agree with that, and I think one of the cool things about Base Batches and then also the Base community is that once you're ingrained or integrated, you can collaborate with other people. And one of the, I feel like there's a hack of mine to meet so many interesting people and be inspired by so many great builders. Just even on this series, meeting a dozen other projects that I was like, wow, you guys are doing great stuff. And then when you see each other's interviews and if you feel inspired or you see some sort of synergies, this is how collaborations happen in the most organic sense.
Yeah, completely. I mean, like if we think about Yield Seeker as a product, or the first agent type that we have as a product, like this is impossible in the traditional world. Like crypto has this unique standing in tech where everything is composable. Like if you're not composable, you're not going to get kind of used. Like you're probably going to die. And part of that composability is obviously there's the technical side, but the human side is so important too. And I think that that's really what I mean by like being part of the ecosystem and moving forward with the Base kind of team / ecosystem. Like exactly like you said, like meeting the right people, having conversations about what is possible, how you could work together. Like it's just having been in normal startups for so long, it's just not something that happens as much there, right? Like there, it's kind of everything's. It's ironic, but everything's more transactional there, whereas here, like the composability means everyone is better off when you build together.
That's it. A rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah, totally.
Now, I just going to ask you a numbers question before we wrap this up. But in terms of like fees, like what sort of fees are people paying to interact, and what sort of like APRs are? Obviously, that's like a very broad question, but like your primary pool, what sort of APRs are we looking at here?
Yep. So at the moment we don't charge fees. And we have a new set of smart contracts coming out, which I'm really excited about. It's like the first secure on-chain security layer for agents. Maybe we could talk about that another day. I'll send you a link. That one, when we launch that, it does have fee abilities, but we're going to set it to 0. We think there's more interesting ways to charge than charging fees, especially on this activity, because like this is savings. We don't really want to charge people for saving. It just feels a little bit wrong. We think the other agents will be a more interesting area to charge. So 0 fees at the moment. The other question was APRs. Great. APRs is really interesting. APYs, we showed it as in the UI. This is really interesting. So generally, towards the end of last year, it was up to like 10%. Right now, it's about 6 to 7%, because we only use other people's vaults, right? So the agents use vaults that are publicly available. They're not obviously safe. Like there's a lot of vaults that will give you more, but I wouldn't trust them, and I can't allow people's agents to like put money in some, basically a hole that's never going to recover from. What's really interesting about this though is we have a big launch coming up today or tomorrow, like one of these days. Like I have to look at it, as soon as I get some time, I'll launch it, where users are able to like very, very finely control their agent. And so if we have a user that says to their agent, always keep 25% of my stablecoins in Aave, they're just going to do that, right? And so their APY would be lower, but because they want that stability, because they want that kind of assuredness of what Aave gives them, and then the other 75% will be played around with. And so at the moment, all the agents are kind of like, just go and find the highest, and there's very little control that you have. Once we implement this feature, which is like basically unlimited control, the APY number question is going to get so confusing to answer, because everyone's agents will be performing totally differently.
Yeah. I knew it was a potentially a like how long is a piece of string kind of question,
right?
But I just wondering about the primary. So there's 2 factors, right? One is like what are the APIs available in the market, but then now also what have people configured their agents to do, which are both quite difficult to answer. Yeah, of course. Well, okay, so finally, how can people get in touch, and how can people learn more about YieldSeeker?
Yeah, so we're the team is really small. It's me and my co-founder, and we have a designer that works with us. So just reach out to us directly. So I'm Christian711 pretty much everywhere. My co-founder is Arthur Fox, A Fox in Web3, and yieldseeker.xyz is our Twitter. We're very open. We speak to our users we're really blessed to have great users. We speak to them pretty much every day, which is awesome for product feedback. Like we keep iterating, whenever we have new stuff to try out, like it goes in our Discord first, and people sign up for the kind of test version of it. So yeah, just jump in Discord, Twitter, wherever. We're always around, and we're always happy to talk to people.
Boom. Well, Christian, I want to say a big thank you to you for your time. Thank you for sharing more about YieldSeeker. I wish you the best in Base Batches 3. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. We'll see you on a future one. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, but most importantly, stay based. Peace out, everyone.
I'm a baseline junkie. I'm a baseline junkie. I'm a baseline junkie. And I like it funky.